What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for another Tottenham update in a bit more of a familiar setting today, back in London. Took us a while to get back here, to be honest. I'm absolutely knackered, stuck in China for a little bit with no access to any sort of Tottenham news or internet, which was absolutely madness. But after our, 37-hour journey back from Seoul after getting our flight delayed, missing our collecting flight from China, we got back, and it's good to be back.
Yeah, it is nice. The water is being transferred from your forehead to the sky this time, as it's now started raining after pretty much no rain in 2 weeks. That we've had very hot weather. But yeah, look, a lot of transfer news has happened in the last 24 hours, which is really, really interesting, I think. So I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Yeah, and as you can see behind me, a nice old grey and rainy London, which we've come back to. But let's talk about transfer news. Let's start off talking about Cuti Romero. As Paul O'Keefe says, in the early part of this year, Real Madrid came in for Cuti and they were testing the waters to ask if Tottenham would sell. Daniel Levy told them 150 million, and they were sort of backed into a corner and went away again. Gaston Edul says Real Madrid were willing to make an offer for Cuti Romero in the transfer market and did contact Tottenham. They responded that they were not willing to sell or negotiate for him. So I think that's the correct stance from Tottenham.
I think it makes sense for Real Madrid to come in for Cuti Romero because there's not many centre-backs of Cuti Romero's quality not playing in the Champions League. So when they're looking for players to upgrade their defence or fill in, because obviously they've got Rudiger, but they've been playing Nacho next to him and they haven't really found a partner. Alaba's been injured a lot. So I'm not surprised they're looking for another centre-back.
They have Militao as well there.
Yeah, they do have Militao. I think he's got not great injury record potentially. So I'm not surprised that they're looking for another centre-back. And there's not like a lot of talent of Romero's quality, as I'm saying, at teams outside the Champions League. So I'm not surprised they're looking at thinking, can we try our luck? Can we see what Romero's thinking? Is he willing to leave? But as we've mentioned before, he's got 3 years left on his deal. There's no rush for Tottenham to leave. He's one of the vice captains of the team. He's one of the obviously main players in the dressing room. And he's been brilliant for the past year or so, really super consistent. We know the quality he's got. We've seen it at international level as well, consistently winning Copa Americas and a World Cup. So obviously, I think that price is absolutely fair from Tottenham. It's considering his age, he's 26, right in his prime as well. He's got many, many years left ahead of him. So I was never going to feel like Tottenham would entertain that kind of interest from Real Madrid.
And I feel like if it was another club outside of the Champions League, they probably would have actually tested the waters and put in a bid. But they know full well what Daniel Levy, how he operates. So I think Florentino Perez has made comments about Daniel Levy in the past as well. So it makes sense that they've just put out one little feeler and then ran a mile.
And I think when they hear Daniel Levy say 150 million, he means 150 million. So that's usually how it works.
Yeah, he probably means 150 million plus add-ons. That's what
exactly.
Means. Let's talk about Emerson Royale. Nothing really much has changed, but Fabrizio Romano says, I expect Tottenham to be busy, definitely because for Emerson Royale, there are conversations ongoing with AC Milan. I think the deal will be done quite soon. They still need to make the final steps, but the agreement is close for around 15 million euros plus add-ons. Tottenham did start the negotiations at 20 million euros, so there is no big gap between the two clubs, and the player wants to go to Milan. He's already agreed on the personal terms at the end of May. Royale is basically waiting for the two clubs to agree and then to travel to complete his medical. So still not much has progressed that much.
Yeah, but it looks like we're getting closer, and it sounds like that the deal will be done. I mean, I keep saying it, but as each day goes on, they keep saying it's edging closer. And look, these deals, sometimes these deals, for one reason or other, they take a bit more time to get over the line for one reason. I can't really say why. The interesting thing about what Romano's saying, I think one of the other updates is he's pretty insistent that Tottenham are still reviewing right-back options. So I wonder what that means for Spence or if we are still looking for a right back, because given that he played in pre-season, I guess I assumed that would mean he would be sticking around here. But if we are looking at other right backs, I don't know if that's as certain still.
I think Spurs will be still looking for new right backs, but I think that the future of Jed Spence isn't cut and dry right now. I think he's still got time to make that decision on Jed Spence. And I think if he makes the decision to sell him, then they'll have a few targets maybe lined up in case Jed Spence doesn't stay. So I think all things are pointing to Jed Spence staying right now, but I think they need to put in some plans just in case he doesn't.
Yeah, that makes sense. And obviously, he's only got one more game of pre-season to really prove himself. Then maybe he'll look at see if he plays a few Premier League games before the end of the window, before they decide if they want to get rid of him or not. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what direction they go in. I'm happy for Spence to stay based on what I've seen, but we'll have to wait and see what Ange decides.
Next up, let's talk about Mikey Moore. The Footy Insider saying that Tottenham are now set to permanently move Mikey Moore into the first team for the upcoming campaign. That could bring plenty of game time for Moore, with the club being involved in the Europa League as well as the usual domestic competitions. Moore's promotion is also expected to come with a contract announcement next week when Mikey turns 17. So that's music to all our ears.
Yeah, fantastic. And he's really impressed in pre-season. We've seen how much quality the kid has, and I've been really surprised about what an impact he's made. Yeah, and I know it's only friendlies, and you could argue he's been coming on in second halves when it's against youth players, but still, a lot of these players he's coming up against are more experienced and they're older than him, and physically he seems to be very much able to compete with them and even get the better of them on a lot of occasions. And he clearly has a lot of quality. And if he is moved to the first team, obviously he's been playing on the right wing for a lot of preseason. Although what's interesting in the last couple of games of preseason, we did see him go out to the left a bit for the last 10 minutes or so of each game. So I wonder where we see him as probably maybe a player who can play on both wings. We know we want to move Sonny back out to the left. That's why we're looking for a striker. We have Werner there, who we've signed on a season-long loan deal. Solomon's still knocking about on the left wing. So maybe most of his minutes is going to come on the right wing with Brennan there, and obviously Decky now more likely to move into the central areas. Maybe we're seeing him as a backup to Brennan, but there's still a bit of talk about potentially getting Neto through the door or another winger. So it'd be interesting if we do bring in another winger, where that leaves Mikey Moore.
Yeah, I think there's certain wingers at the club that I don't think looks like they don't have a future here. Manuel Solomon didn't get 1 minute out in the tour. I mean, I think he played in the first game in Japan, but in the 2 games in Korea, not 1 minute he had, which was interesting to say the least. So I think that you're looking at Mikey Moore now at the age of 16. He's actually ahead of Manuel Solomon in the pecking order, which is mad to think about, isn't it?
Yeah, crazy. Considering Solomon came in as a player who's got Premier League experience. He's played in the Champions League for Shakhtar as well. Had a decent start to his Spurs career before getting that long injury. And yeah, at the moment, he can't even get a look in it. And we saw him in the open training play a bit on the right-hand side as well. So we thought maybe he'd get he might get an opportunity if he's not getting a look in on the left to play back up to Brennan. But he's preferred Mikey Moore there. And I think that's saying a lot at the moment for where Manuel's standing is. But if we do sign a winger, another winger, let's say Neto does come in, we do agree deal with Neto. Where is Mikey Moore going to get minutes? It's going to be difficult.
Yeah, so if we do sign Neto, let's assume Manuel Solomon's going to leave. That would be Neto and Brennan on the right, assuming Kulusevski is going to play a central role this season. And on the left, it will be Werner and Sonny. So, I mean, it's up to Moore to fight his way and get the minutes. I don't know. Like, I was saying to you when we signed Werner that I see Werner Mikey Moore maybe trumping Werner as the season progresses. But I would like to see Mikey Moore get those early minutes in the Europa League and in the domestic cups. But maybe Werner just is there for a last gasp option, and maybe Mikey Moore will be ahead of Timo Werner. Who knows?
I don't know. I don't think we've signed Werner on loan not to play. I think we've signed him to play, I think. So
maybe we've just signed him to add the numbers, to make up the numbers, because we need numbers.
I know we need numbers. Look, and we'll have to wait and see whether Mikey Moore is ahead of Werner. But look, as much as I love Mikey Moore and I think he's great, I'm not going to sit here and say he's better than Werner right now on the current version of each player. Werner's a very experienced international. He's clearly making an impact in the team as well. Obviously, he has his flaws. We know that finishing and all that can be a bit wasteful, but doesn't mean a 17-year-old Mikey Moore right now is a better player than him. So,
let's get it right though. Let's get it right. Like, all players are going to get injuries throughout the season. Like we've seen, who have we seen? Pedro. If we do sign Pedro Neto, he's guaranteed to get injuries throughout the season. Werner's had a few niggling injury problems since he's joined the club as well. So even if you have 5 wingers, there's still going to be minutes for all.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, and especially in Europa League as well. And maybe he'll just be off the bench. I don't know how many games he's going to start. And maybe he doesn't need to start so many games, when he's 17 and he's bedding into the team. But I think the it's really encouraging that up there. I mean, look, he's only Footy Insider as well, so we don't know how reliable it is. But I mean, judging from what we've seen in pre-season, it does make sense that Tottenham would put him into the first team for next season because he looks like he's ready to make an impact, especially off the bench.
Yeah, this next one's an interesting one. Paul O'Keefe saying that Tottenham are not against the idea of Will Lancashire starting from the bench for the upcoming campaign. And it's obviously well known in the press, which we'll get into a bit later in the video, about Dominic Solanke coming in. Spurs are looking to press forward with that deal. And that makes me, and it goes back to our conversation the other day when we were talking about Richarlison. I mean, if Will Lancashire is going to play the backup to the striker role with Dominic Solanke potentially coming in, where does this leave Richarlison?
Well, I'm assuming that would only be the case if Richarlison leaves. I'm guessing if Richarlison stays, I don't think that would be the case. I think Lancashire would have to go on loan. That would be the situation, I think. Richarlison's still a very good player. I don't think Richarlison's a major problem. I think if you've got Solanke and Richarlison rotating, that's pretty good options. And I think Richarlison, the biggest problem last season with Richarlison wasn't how he played. It was more that he was injured. And when he was playing, he was actually pretty good. He had a pretty good goal scoring record. So
his injury problems were there in the first season with us as well, and he's injured now. I mean, he can't.
But then we have Solanke, so he doesn't have to be injury free the whole time. And also at Everton, I don't think his injury record was that bad. So maybe I don't know if it's been a tough couple of years for him, or he is a injury prone player. I'm not sure what the reason is, but I like the idea of Richarlison and Solanke rotating in that position. They both showed they can do that role. But if we do get a good offer for Richarlison and then Lancashire can come in and means we don't need to sign another striker on top of Solanke. So I think that's maybe what that report is in thinking. I don't think it's saying I might be wrong. I don't believe it's saying we're going to sell Richarlison because we think Lancashire's better. I think it's saying if we do sell Richarlison, we're not against Lancashire being our backup striker.
I just think it makes total sense to try and sell Richarlison this summer. I just think it does. I mean, I like him as a player, I like him as a person, and I like his attitude, but his injury problems are just too much. And when you spend so much money on him, 60 million, if you can get anything close to that, even 45 plus, I would accept the bid and let him go on his way, and then promote one of the youth like a Lancashire and have him and Dominic Solanke fighting for that position.
I think in terms of if we want to do something really important for next season, I think the best course of action is to keep Richarlison, have Solanke, and send Lancashire on loan. That would be my that's what I would do.
But then you can keep Solanke. Richarlison gets injured for a big chunk of the season, then you're left with not another number 9.
Anyone can get injured for a large chunk of the season. You don't know that. Like I know he's been injured, but you can say that about anyone essentially. Like
you can say that about anyone, but someone who has previous ever since he's joined here, it's more likely than him than someone else.
But also I've seen him stay injury free for Everton as well. So like I don't know if this is a player who's just injury prone. I know he's been a bit injury prone since he's been at Tottenham, but just because that's happened doesn't mean he's always going to be that way. And
we're hearing as well from various different sources that these are the major concerns about him within the club. So the club are even concerned about that kind of situation as well.
Yeah, because that's how I can understand that, because that's how he's been since he's been here. I'm just saying, I think we're better off for next season having Richarlison and Solanke there than having Solanke and Lancashire. I think I'm not saying that's a totally bad thing. I'm just saying if I'm weighing up the pros and cons, I think if you're rotating 2 Premier League class strikers and then you're sending Lancashire on loan to get minutes and improve himself and develop, I think that's the better course rather than having Lancashire as backup striker potentially when he's not definitely ready to make an impact in Premier League football, and he's also going to be on the bench. His minutes is going to be more restricted, and then if Solanke does get injured, you're putting a lot of pressure on Lancashire where you're not sure if he is not ready. That could kill his confidence rather than having Richarlison who's ready to step in. Yeah.
I can see where you're coming from, and I think if it is a real fit Richarlison and you can keep him fit for the majority of the season, and let's say he can be on the bench for 25 games a season, 25 games plus a season, I'd be bang up for that. But that remains to be seen at the moment, and it hasn't come to pass in the last 2 seasons. But have to wait and see which direction they do go in with that. Next up, let's talk about some incomings now. And a new name that came to the fore a couple of days ago, I think, or a day ago, Amir Richardson. The Athletic says that Leicester are set to rival Tottenham in the race to sign Morocco Olympic sensation Amir Richardson from Reims. Santiago Una says Amir Richardson who is playing for Morocco at the Olympics, is closely observed by Tottenham, and Spurs have ticked his name off the list of potential midfield recruits. So he's a defensive midfielder, 22 years of age, a very tall player in 6'5" in his height. He's tall, physical, great ball carrier, and a number 6 with sheer defensive presence. So do you know much about him?
I don't, but I know that Spurs, at the Athletic, is reporting that Spurs are definitely still looking for a central midfielder who's very energetic and very physical. And
they were talking about an 8, though, weren't they?
Well, I don't know if this player can play the 8 or the 6, or if where we're looking for him to play. But I know that Tottenham are still looking for a central midfielder. That's what the Athletic are reporting. So whether we think this guy fits the bill or not remains to be seen. Look, 6'5", that is a very tall midfield player. And a lot of the times, if you can have that kind of player with that kind of physical attributes and match that up with technical ability, then you're really on for a winner. So it'll be very interesting if this is a young player who's got a real high ceiling, and Tottenham are looking at this potential midfield and thinking, if we get him in at this point, we could get him in at a really good time and he could really explode next season. I can't really comment too much in terms of what I think of him because I haven't seen too much of him. But in terms of the profile, it sounds very exciting.
Now we've got an extensive update on Dominic Solanke, seeing as we were stuck in China for a bit. So a bit of this has come from yesterday as well. So I'll go through it one by one. Paul O'Keefe says that Dominic Solanke is itching to come to Tottenham. Solanke is one of the names that has been identified who is most suited to play Ange Postecoglou's system. Pressing is the key word being thrown around for the number 9 Tottenham want. Tottenham are really starting to pursue a move for Dominic Solanke. 55 million plus add-ons would get the deal done, says Paul O'Keefe. Matt Law says that Tottenham are attempting to make progress in a move to bring in Bournemouth striker Dominic Solanke, and there is work to be done if the deal is to be completed. Solanke is high up on the list of striker targets for Tottenham, and he's seen as a good fit for Postecoglou's system, and the club have held talks regarding the move for a striker. He has a high buyout clause in his Bournemouth contract, which is thought to be about £65 million, but the club have said to be unwilling to match that. Tottenham could try and strike a deal for under the clause by offering Bournemouth a favourable payment terms. And Postecoglou would like to have the option to move Heung-min Son back out to the left, where he is arguably more effective by signing an established striker. Solanke would like to have another opportunity to prove himself at one of the Premier League's biggest clubs. Fabrizio Romano says that Tottenham have started exploring a deal for Dominic Solanke last week, as exclusively revealed. He's on the shortlist, and Spurs are well informed on the release clause. Initial talks have taken place. Bournemouth still hope to keep Solanke, and the Mail, which is Simon Jones, says that Spurs have stepped up their interest now in Dominic Solanke and are pushing to sign the player. He is high up on Ange Postecoglou's summer wish list.
Definitely hotting up this deal, isn't it? A lot of talk from a lot of reliable sources, and that would suggest to me that there's definitely some truth to Tottenham's interest in Solanke. As I've reported, as we've spoken about before, when you're looking at the profile of striker, if Tottenham want a big, tall, physical striker with good aerial ability, who's good at first-time finishes and good at pressing, and with the bonus of big English and Premier League experience, you're pretty much looking at Tony, Watkins, and Solanke when you're lacking that profile, or you maybe Gyökeres as well because he's played in England before, but only in the Championship. But it's not that that of an extensive list. So I think Solanke for that kind of price isn't. He's maybe a bit overpriced, but I don't think it's way overpriced. I don't think it's like you're massively overpaying. I don't think this is like a £30 million striker that we're going to be paying £65 million for potentially. I think his price is probably around 50 million. I think that's probably a fair price. And if you're paying over that, you're probably overpaying a bit. But I don't think I'm massively overpaying by paying 65. Obviously, it says Tottenham could offer more favourable payment terms. But if you're activating a release clause and that's majority up front, I don't know what more could be more favourable than that, to be honest.
They're saying they're not activating the release clause. It's going to be a bit lower, but more favourable payment terms.
But that's what I'm saying. How can it be more favourable than activating the release clause?
I don't know. Maybe if they,
you know what I mean.
Good point.
So I don't really understand how that works. The only thing I've seen is Tottenham might be willing to go over the release clause figure with more favourable payment terms. I saw that kind of report. Paul O'Keefe suggesting 55 million plus add-ons could potentially get the deal done, and maybe with a payment structure there. I guess it all depends on, are Bournemouth willing? Do Bournemouth want the money to reinvest in their team, and do they? They're quite, again, similar to like Brentford. They've been quite smart with their business, Bournemouth, and they're quite good at finding value in the market. So they might see it as, okay, 55 million plus add-ons, we can take that, sign a striker from another league for like 20 million, and then we have some more like money to play with. They might think that, or
nobody's coming in to activate that release clause. I think they know, Bournemouth know nobody's going to come in and activate that release clause.
So it depends how willing they are to do the deal. Are they going to be adamant that we're not selling Solanke unless that release clause is met? And if that is the case, then it's going to be very difficult to do this deal. If they're going to be a bit more open to,
I think they will be. I'm pretty sure
selling him. Depends if they really want to send. The reports at the moment are they don't want to sell him, and they're going to be stubborn on the release clause. But teams like Bournemouth generally like to sell. However, with the money in the Premier League right now, teams like Bournemouth don't need to sell as much as they used to.
Yeah, but the key thing here is that what Paul O'Keefe is saying is that Dominic Solanke is itching to move to Tottenham. Matt Law says he wants to try himself at one of the big six clubs again. I think that's going to be the key here. And if Dominic Solanke really pushes for this move, I think it happens.
And this is a really good opportunity and a really good time for him. He is 26, so I think the timing can be better for Dominic Solanke in terms of where he is in his career to make that step up. Obviously, he's just had probably the best season in his career in the Premier League, scoring 19 goals last season, which is actually the same amount as Watkins got, who everyone went crazy about. I know he probably got more assists, but Solanke offers very similar things to what Tony and Watkins do in terms of such a physical threat. He can run in behind. He's brilliant with his first time finishing with crosses in the box. I do think he'd be a real perfect fit for Ange Postecoglou in his system. I'm looking at the goals Richarlison scored last season with those first time finishes, and I think Solanke would do them, would eat those chances up as well.
Like a lot more variety, in my opinion, as well, Solanke.
Yeah, maybe even better aerially. I think his hold-up play is really great. I've seen him bullying some really top defenders in this league and giving them a lot of trouble. I think when it comes to his quality in terms of passing ability, I think it's good. I think Watkins and Tony are a bit better than him, but I still think it's a good level, and I think it could maybe even improve when he comes to Tottenham.
Let me just read out these stats that were from Data MB. Like, first for headed goals last season, comparing him to other strikers. First for offensive duels. First for interceptions. First for progressive passes percentage. Second for expected goals. Second for passes into the penalty area percentage. Third for non-penalty goals. Third for goals. Third for aerial duels. And fourth for dribbles. I mean, that's unbelievable.
Dribbling, he's good as well. Good at the ball at his feet, and he's hard because he's strong. When defenders get close to him, he can actually outmuscle them and push them off and keep the ball. And I've seen him do that a number of times and get the finish off. Look, these are good numbers, and I'm saying he's a good player. I like him, and I think Tottenham will do well to sign him. And I think a lot of people look at his time at Chelsea and Liverpool, and because he kind of failed at those clubs, they're maybe blinded by that a bit. And I know 2 seasons ago, under Gary O'Neill in the Premier League, he didn't have the best season, albeit I remember there was a part of that season he went through quite a rich vein of form, but overall I think he only got 7 Premier League goals. But sometimes strikers find their feet at different ages. Look at Watkins, for example. It was about this kind of age he started really exploding in the Premier League for Aston Villa once he got that move from Brentford in the Championship. So just because he hasn't been killing it for 5 years in a row doesn't mean this guy can't do a really good job for Tottenham. It doesn't mean it's not a worthwhile signing. We saw in the Championship when he was there, it was too easy for him. He scored a bucket load of goals on a couple of occasions. He had 2 great seasons in the Championship. So we know this is a real good goal-scoring forward. He's really good physically. I think the way Iraola has got Bournemouth playing, it will actually really benefit us if he does sign us, because he's really improved his all-round game as well. He's not just a penalty box finisher. He's actually a real big threat in behind and can really hold the ball up as well. So I think he does have quite a lot of strings to his bow. Just because maybe, in my opinion, Tony or Watkins might be slightly better in other areas doesn't mean what Watkins will bring to us, as what Solanke will bring to us, isn't really valuable and worth bringing to the club for that. So I think it'll be a great signing, and I think Ange could do a lot with him.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think like when you're comparing Tony and Big Dom, I feel like Tony might be a better all-round game player, but I feel like Dominic Solanke might be more of a better fit for what we're trying to do and what we need for that number 9 in this Ange Postecoglou system. So I'm bang up for getting some Dominic Solanke in.
Also, Tony, the other couple drawbacks with Tony is, first of all, he's not coming into this season as good a form as Solanke. Solanke's in red hot form. And I was actually looking at his goal scoring from last season, Solanke, and he was a very consistent goal scorer in terms of he didn't really go through many goal droughts. Like he pretty much, I don't think he went like more than like 3 games without a goal. So that's really good. And he's coming into this season a lot more with a lot more form, which can be important. You can like ride that wave. And also Tony's much plays in a front 2 a lot more than Solanke. Solanke's much more used to playing in that lone front role, so that's going to be a role he's much more used to at Tottenham. Whereas Tony's a lot more used to having like an Mbeumo next to him and playing off him a lot. And whether he have to get used to being the lone front man or not, remains to be seen. Obviously, Tony will be a bit cheaper, but he is a bit older as well than Solanke. So people can make their own minds. Honestly, Tony might be slightly better, but there's not much in it, and I don't think that quality gap can't be made up by time on the training pitch with Spurs for Solanke, to be honest.
The prediction is for Solanke to join Spurs and Solanke to take Tony's place in the England squad come end of the year.
Wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised.
Let's move on and talk about Pedro Neto now. As James Ducker from the Telegraph says that Pedro Neto has been linked with Tottenham, is a player of interest to Manchester City. And Paul O'Keefe says that from what I can gather, it's going to be Eze or Neto. I believe Tottenham have spoken to the people involved who can facilitate a deal for Pedro Neto. He is definitely one that they're going to pursue, which is very interesting. He seems like, Spurs have started the cogs rolling, the ball rolling for this Pedro Neto deal. And look, I've spoken about Pedro Neto, about how I think his injury problems are a massive worry if we are going to sign him. But if we do sign him and he can stay fit for 20 games a season or something like that, it is going to be very valuable to us. And when he does get injured, it does open a pathway for certain other players as well.
Yeah, look, I'm all for the signing if the financials make sense. I don't think we should overspend on him, because if you're spending, 60 plus million potentially on a player who could potentially be out injured for a lot, then that's a lot. Then that could be too much of a risk. I do think if we can get a deal done for like 45 million plus appearance fee, add-ons and stuff like that, that could be worth the risk, just because of how highly I rate Neto and the quality of player and how perfect he would be for the system. Sometimes you've just got to take that risk, because if it pays off, it's going to pay off big. And I know if it doesn't pay off, it will be a problem. But we do still have other players in that position, so it's not like we're completely screwed if he has a few injuries. But obviously that wouldn't be good, and that would be a big problem if we sign him for a decent fee and he doesn't get on the pitch. But I just feel like with Neto, sometimes the risk versus reward, depending on how much we pay for him, balances out in certain ways, and I'm leaning towards signing him if the fees are right. So I'm generally very excited about the prospect of Pedro Neto joining. It's interesting to hear that Man City interested, because I think he would definitely suit Man City. Obviously, since Mahrez left, and then obviously there's Palmer as well. There's probably a vacancy on the right-hand side. They played Silva a lot there last season. I'm trying to think who else played there for Man City a lot on the right-hand side. I know Oscar Bobby's been playing there a lot in pre-season. So maybe they're looking at Neto and thinking there's a potential to get him through the door because they've got an opening. But, I mean, if you're up against Man City, it's going to be difficult to go head-to-head with them. Although Man City don't tend to overpay for players, but then neither do we. So I can't see Tottenham outbidding Man City on that front. But yeah, look, let's see how it progresses. A lot of the ITK talk is about Neto nearing Tottenham being very much pushing for Neto. So I really hope there's no smoke without fire, and we're really going for him, because I think he's just a perfect fit for the team. And let's just hope we do get him, he can stay on the pitch, and that'll be the main thing.
If we finish this transfer window with Dominic Solanke, Pedro Neto, Archie Gray, and Timo Werner through the door, and we get no one else, What are you saying about the window? Is it a good window?
Then obviously you considering Bergval's in there as well, but we haven't addressed. Could have had a left centre back or left back, which we haven't addressed fully. I think it's positive. I think it's more good than bad, probably, because what are we not getting? If we get Neto, Solanke, Gray, and who's the other one, Werner, I'll probably give it a 7 out of 10. Probably.
Yeah, I just feel like we're
Maybe
leaving ourselves short in defence. We need one more, I think, just as the cover.
And maybe it will go. To be fair, going into the window, a lot, number 6 was a number 1 priority for a lot of people. So, not getting that would be a bit of a disappointment. But then again, if he can get the best out of Basuma, it might not be the biggest issue. But that's a lot. That can, is a lot to ask for. We know Basuma can do the job. We know maybe Gray can grow into that role. So it's not like we're completely out of options, but it's not like we could potentially be leaving ourselves short there as well. So I can understand why Tottenham are looking for a midfielder. I think if you add a midfielder in there, that probably goes to an 8, depending on who it is, maybe goes to 8 or 9.
Yeah, but we can only add a midfielder if we get rid of one.
Yeah, we can only add a midfielder if we get rid of one. Yeah. Yeah, I guess if we're seeing Gray as a number 6, then maybe we don't. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's just Gray and Basuma are going to be rotating.
You've got to remember, we're adding Bergval and Gray to the midfield roster this season. That's 2 in. Lo Celso's still there. I assume he's still going to go from now to the end of the window. But to bring in those 2, to get rid of Lo Celso, Højbjerg, and that's it, right? That's the only 2 midfielders that are going to go.
Probably.
So there you go. Like,
unless you sell Spence, you have Gray as your backup right back, and then you sign another midfielder.
Yeah,
do that, and then you can give Gray some minutes in midfield when need be, like Europa League or some game. If we get injuries, he can play there as well. We know he can play that role, and as well he can play backup right back to Porro. We know he can play that role as well. Maybe that's the way to go. But I'm not 100% sure what the right thing is. It seems as though the talk about number 6 has been quite quiet, to be honest. I don't know if that's something we're leaning away towards. I don't know how many more updates you're going to go through, but there was a report, I think, from the Athletic about what our priorities are this summer.
So yeah, I don't have that.
No, it wasn't for Athletic. So it was Paul O'Keefe, who's in the podcast yesterday, saying Daniel Levy's priorities this summer is about getting players out the door and lowering the wage bill, which, if that's true, is like really disappointing. That's literally a lot of last summer as well was doing that. And like last season, one of the biggest problems was we didn't have enough players of quality in the squad to do the job, and we had injuries and there was big problems. So I don't know how we can follow that season being the priority to thin the squad even more.
Yeah, I kind of do understand it though, because there has been a lot of players that we've needed to shift this summer, and there's still more players there that we need to shift.
No, I get it. I get that there's players we need to shift. I'm sure that's right. That's fair for everyone, but I don't understand how that can be the priority, because last season one of the biggest problems was a thin squad. So how can the priority after a season like that be to shift players?
Because a lot of players have come back, and we need to get these guys out the door and before we can actually start properly strengthening, because we still have a fairly bloated squad.
I know, but the priority should be to add quality depth to that squad, because we're going to be playing a lot of games. So for me, that should be the priority rather than getting players out the door. Look, even if it means just send Regular on loan again, I'm not really bothered by that. Just do it if it means what's best for the team.
Last couple we got. First, about Jonathan David from L'Equipe, saying Tottenham are showing a concrete interest in completing a deal for Jonathan David before the deadline. The player has already rejected a potential transfer to Roma during this transfer window. And when you're looking at Jonathan David compared to maybe a Dominic Solanke, obviously one is much cheaper than the other. And I think there's probably, well, the reason is because of the contract and everything like that. But I'd much rather see Dominic Solanke come through than Jonathan David.
Yeah, I can understand the appeal of Jonathan David. But again, if we're going, Ange has been pretty certain that we're looking for like a certain profile of striker, isn't he? And the strikers we've been linked with would suggest it's not kind of the Jonathan David mold. Jonathan David would be fairly similar to Sonny, maybe a bit more physical, maybe a bit more better in the duels and stuff like that. But he would be a kind of similar forward to Sonny, who did obviously a decent job last season, but it looks like we're looking for a different profile. So maybe it's one maybe it's a good fullback if it's really impossible for us to get Tony or Solanke or Gyökeres or something like that, and then we can get David for a cheap fee for like 25 million. He could be a good fullback option, and we can see what he can do. Maybe he can surprise us in terms of what we want. But to me, it sounds like if he was our number one choice, it would be a no-brainer to just go for him now. So it sounds like he's maybe a fullback option.
Yeah. And last but not least, caught offside is saying that Tottenham are eyeing a move for Crystal Palace defender Joachim Andersen as Ange Postecoglou looks to bolster his back line. This is one of the most rubbish reports I've ever heard. I mean, aren't like Newcastle on the brink of signing Gehi?
And why would we sign Anderson? I mean, I know he's a good player, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't really make sense for Tottenham to sign Anderson right now for big money. Sorry?
Back up to Van der Ven.
He's not really left-sided defender. He's more of a right-sided defender. That's where he's been at his best for Palace. When he plays in the back three, he plays on the right. So or centre or right anyway. Never plays on the left. So and Palace are going to really let go of Guehi and Anderson. Is the price for Anderson not really going to go up? And as well, I know he's a good player, Anderson, but he's not the paciest defender. So I don't know how he would fare in like a real aggressive high line.
Never going to happen.
It doesn't make sense. None of it makes sense. So I think it's a terrible report.
While we've been talking, actually, Jack Pickbrook is just adding a bit more to the Mikey Moore thing. He says Mikey Moore's new contract will be more than Tottenham have ever offered a player at Mikey Moore's age, and it will be a 3-year contract.
Wow. That shows the belief we have in him. So, he's saying...
I can't imagine that we've offered 16-year-olds big contracts before.
Yeah, but look, didn't we hear a couple years ago that Spurs are looking to spend a bit more money on youth prospects because we keep getting outbid by teams abroad or something like that. So they're looking to invest a lot more. And that was one of the things I think Paratici was very focused on. So this is more evidence of that.
Cheeky bid for Obi, the guy that's left Arsenal.
Yeah, why not? Maybe. I mean, he looks good, but maybe that'll be
10 goals in the game.
I mean, what level was it?
Yeah, under 18s, the same level as Mikey Moore was playing last season.
I remember Koulibaly was smashing it for the under 18s when we had him, and he didn't turn out. I mean, I'm not saying this guy's not good. I'm just saying you can't just because he's got 10 goals in the game doesn't mean he's destined to be the next Messi. But
he had a better season for the Arsenal under 18s than Mikey Moore had in the Spurs team.
Yeah, but that age development, it works at a very different level. It's just because he's killing it, you have to see how he does when he gets first team opportunities. When Mikey Moore's done, he's done great. I don't know how Obi looks when he's with the first team. I mean, I'm not there.
Arsenal were desperate to keep him, like absolutely desperate to keep him. They were throwing loads of money at him. He's ended up getting offers from Bayern Munich, Manchester United. So, I mean, if we're signing all these young players, then why just put in a cheeky bid for him? Like, who knows?
Anything to stick it to Arsenal.
Exactly.
And I think Jack Pickbrook is saying it's going to be confirmed on Sunday on his birthday. So that's really good news.
All right. Well, that is your Tottenham update for today. A nice long one for you to get your teeth into. But thank you, everyone, for joining us. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, come on, you Spurs.